My name is Susanna Peredo, founder and executive director of Vanguard Culture, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to advancing the creative industries. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to our art shop talk Francisco Morales. He is the gallery director at The Front, Arte Cultura, which is a binational art gallery in the border region. And before we bring him on, I'd love to read you his bio. He's a very interesting individual, and I'm really excited to interview him. So Pablo Francisco Morales is originally from Mexico City, currently living and working in San Diego, California. Francisco is a composer and multimedia artist. He creates music, sound, and multimedia installations, interventions, and performances. His work has been presented throughout the world, specifically across Mexico, the United States, Europe, and South America. Francisco is the current gallery director at The Front, Arte Cultura, binational art gallery in the border region of San Isidro, United States, and Tijuana, Mexico, in Baja California, where he curates art exhibitions, workshops, and performances, focused on the transnational artistic life of the region, but keeping an eye on the international art scene as well. He is also an educator leading the art youth training program at the gallery. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Francisco. Welcome.
Hello, Susanna. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invite, and thank you for your interest in this work that we do.
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you that don't know this San Diego, Tijuana kind of region, I'd love to give everybody just a little bit of an idea about what the art scene looks like in living in this binational space. Tell us a little bit about the art scene in Tijuana and how it is connected to the San Diego community.
Yes. So as you mentioned, we are right in the border of these two countries. However, the border is not only a separation between Mexico and the USA. It is also where the whole Latin American continent crashes, collides, blends with North America. So there is centuries of tradition, centuries of communities, indigenous communities colliding with this North America that has also a background that comes from Europe. So, you know, that's what's laying really under the whole border situation. Mm-hmm. As an arts organization, we deal with artists from both sides of the border, which means artists from Central America, from South America, from Mexico, from Canada, from the United States. And San Isidro becomes a bridge. Even though sometimes these two cultures collide, also there's a lot of times in which they blend. And it is impossible sometimes to identify if an artist is from Tijuana living in San Diego or from San Diego living in Tijuana. So this is a space where also a lot of USA artists have their last stop in the USA before actually starting showing their work in Mexico. This is also a space where artists from Mexico have their first approach to a USA gallery before actually going deeper into the country. San Isidro is right in the border in the corner of Mexico and in USA. So there is also a corridor that a lot of musicians use when they are touring. They start in Seattle and come down all the way down to Los Angeles, San Diego, and then cross to Tijuana, some of them. Then they could go east to Tucson and vice versa. So this is an arts corridor, and happens the same in Mexico. Artists show their work in Tijuana, they show their work in Monterrey, then they go down to the center of the country, Guadalajara, Morelia, Mexico, right? So there's a lot of things moving in this part of the world, a lot of people, a lot of artworks and ideas.
So how do you typically find your curators and your artists? I know that you bring in guest curators regularly. Are they from this region, or how does that happen?
Yes, so the idea is to work with the community, and the community is it's a very big word. It could mean almost everybody, right? But we are focusing on the small groups. One of them could be, of course, the transborder community, which means artists and curators who can cross the border, who work in San Diego, who work in Tijuana, and feel confident about it, and know artists from both sides of the border, because that's another important thing. You have to be in both sides, one step here, one step there, to actually get a glimpse of the transnational and binational life. So that is very important.
Complicated for you in terms of like, what are the logistics of getting artwork across the border? Does it make it more challenging, or is it?
Well, crossing the border, it's always a challenge. You know, it's always facing a federal agent that is trained to, you know, find drugs, find criminals. And sometimes they treat you as one, even though you're just crossing art. You know, they don't trust anybody. And that is difficult, of course. Artists who want to cross their work here, depending on the size, they have to do some paperwork sometimes. Some other times, it's just, it's enough if we send them a letter, an invitation letter from the gallery, and they show that at the border, and then they can cross the artwork. It is difficult, yes. Waiting times are big also. But just like everybody living in this region, we make it happen, right? We're used to it.
Yeah, we're incredibly resilient here along the border. So has the pandemic created more opportunities in this like virtual space? I mean, can you work now with curators that are just not right across the border, but maybe like, you know, in another country quite far away, like another Latin American country?
Yes, yes. And I was talking about this with Norma Iglesias Prieto. Yeah, so the pandemic brought other things that I assume they're going to stay, like online meetings, online workshops, and online just working generally. You're right. Actually, the next exhibition, we're going to work with a curator from Mexico City and 2 curators from San Diego. So that is something that we've never done before, and we never thought about it before. But now it seems possible. We've done it with Ingrid, and I have kind of a strategy now, and we're gonna make it happen. And that is exciting, actually.
Yeah, I'm definitely really excited by how the world came together, and, you know, it just opened up this whole series of opportunities in terms of working with people that, you know, normally would have had to get on a plane, find a place to stay, you know, all of that, the expenses attached to bringing like a guest curator from, you know, a different country, for example. So I do want to talk about the show that we're about to see, which is the Dia de la Mujer, as you know, translates to International Women's Day in English. Can you give us a little bit of sense, because this is a, you know, Mexico, United States centric type of exhibition. Can you give us a sense of what Dia de la Mujer, how it's traditionally, you know, celebrated in Mexico, or are there any, you know, traditions that are attached to this that we should know about, like to give it a little bit of context?
Not really. I mean, and actually it's a very delicate subject now, because the commemoration, I wouldn't call it a celebration, the commemoration of International Women's Day is now seen as an opportunity to resist, to be resilient, to talk about all these issues affecting women and womanhood. So as an exhibition, it becomes an image of that resilience, of that even violence, you know, that is being committed against women. And coming from Mexico, where there's a lot of women being killed with no response by the government whatsoever, you know, the exhibition becomes an act of resistance and a protest even.
I think this is the first time in the last few years that women have felt empowered to have a voice and to finally push back against this en masse, you know, so I'd love to talk about what we see in the exhibition. First, it's called Domestic Geographies, and the central theme is the home. So my understanding is that each artist submitted works that respond to the various roles that women play in the home and then attempt to reimagine them. So give us a little bit of an overview. Which ones are your favorite artists? Give us some examples that we're going to see in a minute.
Yes, exactly. So the theme of the exhibition is every year selected by the curator, the guest curator. In this case, Ingrid Hernandez. She's a photographer and curator from Tijuana. And she chose this title. She named the exhibition Domestic Geographies. And the exhibition is about how women have to reinvent themselves within the domestic sphere to, you know, survive, resist, at the same time work from home, and then have their families there and their kids, and do all these things that women do, also in the middle of the pandemic. The exhibition is not about the pandemic, but I think the pandemic highlighted the fact that, hey, so many different and difficult things happen at home, and we don't pay attention to them. So this exhibition is about that. And yes, artists submitted works that talk about these issues, talk about domestic violence, talk about traditions in the family, that talk about the body, sexuality, you know, all these things that happen just to any of us, but more specifically to women and how they affect them. That's what the exhibition is about. We have a lot of photography. We have a lot of contemporary photography from the region. Some of them are from Tijuana, some of them are from Ensenada. And there is a very interesting photography scene in this part of the world. And it's very strong. The themes are very strong. They talk about violence. They talk about love and violence within your partner. They talk about religious violence, and, you know, so many very actually difficult themes to talk about in an everyday conversation. So if you come to see the exhibition, you're going to see a lot of, I would say, hard to swallow pills, right? It's not a beautiful exhibition. It is difficult because there's so many difficult things happening in this part of the world. We have also works that talk about the domestic work, you know, all the work that women do in their houses and is not paid. We talk about the body, sexuality, body shaming, you know, all these issues affecting women of all ages. We have a couple of sculptures and a lot of video art.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you have mixed media, multimedia sculpture, fiber arts, I thought I saw in there as well. I know you have great photography and then traditional 2D work.
We have artists from different parts of the world, not only from Tijuana and San Diego. So we have videos from Costa Rica. We have a book from Brazil. We have photographies from the UK. We have a video from Norway. You know, so the video selection is very international. And the video language, the visual language, it's very fresh, I would call it.
So let's take a moment to watch that and we'll kind of come back and touch base, okay? Thanks.
Okay.
Uno de los primeros ejes es el hogar como espacio para el activismo, las micropolíticas y la agencia personal. Otro eje importante dentro de la exhibición es cuerpo e identidad, el cuerpo homenajeado, el cuerpo cuestionado o el cuerpo aceptado. Un tercer eje es reinterpretaciones, reapropiaciones, cuestionamientos a las tradiciones y herencias familiares. El cuarto, reimaginación y revalorización de roles y de las tareas domésticas. Y el quinto núcleo está compuesto por tradiciones, también identidades y migración.
See, I'm only an image of what you see. I'm only an image of what you see. You don't know me, you don't know me, you don't know me. I'm only an image of what you see. I'm only an image of what you see. I'm only an image of what you see. You don't know me, you don't know me, you don't know me. Coming on the inside. I'm always coming on the inside. I'm always coming on the inside. When you're coming on the outside. See my frame. I'm only a figure if you can see my frame. I'm only a figure if you can see my frame. Fire with no fire with no fire with no flame. I'm only a struggle if I get in your way. I'm only a struggle if I get in your way.
We were talking about the differences between film and video art. And video art is definitely dares to do more things, right? Changes the traditional ways of pointing the camera, the framing, and all these techniques that there's kind of a standard in film. Video art is just different. You could use any camera. You could use an antique camera to make a contemporary piece. So it's very fresh. That's kind of one word that describes.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the video section. So tell us about the two curators that you brought on. One of them is a video art curator specifically, and then the other one is a film curator. Tell us about the two bodies of work that they created or that they curated.
Itzel Martinez del Cañizo. She is a curator from Mexico, Tijuana, and now we live in Mexico City. She's been working with this film festival called Ambulante. It's a film festival in Mexico moving across the country. So she has a vast knowledge about film. And she created these 7 movies, amazing movies. I saw almost all of them. And these movies talk about what happens within the domestic sphere. It could be about 3 brothers taking care of their 94-year-old grandma suddenly. And what happens with, in that situation? It could be about gender violence. It could be about love. So Itzel Martinez del Cañizo brought a very specific perspective, that is not actually giving you answers on what is right and what is wrong, but is just raising more questions. It doesn't condemn men as the guilty of all the problems happening to women, but actually shows us different masculinities and how there's some people actually doing right. We have Karla Aguiñiga as a co-curator of the video art program. Karla was invited by Ingrid Hernandez, the curator of the exhibition. Karla is an artist and curator from the USA and Mexico, working in Tijuana, Los Angeles, San Diego. And Karla invited this selection of artists. Karla Aguiñiga selected video art pieces that talk about reinventing and how we make visible what is invisible within the domestic sphere, right? Like domestic work. How many hours do we work at home? How much that should be paid? And nobody talks about that.
Okay, so we're back. I mean, that was really incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us. You do have one very famous person that you're working with, Julieta Venegas, who's curating the music experiences for the show. Tell us about that.
Yes, Julieta Venegas curated a playlist on Spotify. And it is amazing. I mean, also Ingrid invited her, and Julieta has a knowledge of all this music that is related to what domestic geographies is, which is resilience, resistance, domestic violence, reinventing the roles within the domestic sphere. And Julieta Venegas has selected a group of artists from Mexico, from Puerto Rico, from USA that talk about these subjects. Yeah. And the music is amazing.
Yeah, well, she's amazing. So I mean, as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, I'm on it. I'm downloading all of these.
It's a very nice playlist. Yes.
Yeah, she's truly amazing. What a great connection, and I'm glad that you have her support. So are any of these artworks available for purchase? How do we get in touch with you? If there's something that calls our attention, how do we get in touch? How do we get in touch with the artists?
Yes, thank you for asking. I'm gonna share my email with you so people can contact me directly for inquiries. And inviting everybody who sees something that, hey, calls your attention, please send me a message and we can make the connections.
We'll put that information up as well. And the last thing is I'd love to, we're talking about trends in art, and I don't want to call this a trend because I want it to last, but I know that a lot of people are paying attention to artists that are BIPOC artists, Black and Indigenous people of color. And you work with a lot of, BIPOC artists, but you are also just in tune with the art world right now. So tell us who we should be paying attention to right now. Who are those, up and coming emergent artists that you really want to advocate for right now?
Yes, we have shown some artists in the gallery. We have had solo exhibitions of some of these artists or being part of group exhibitions. And I have a few names of local artists who are amazing. One of them is Itzel Javier. She's a Filipino-American artist working in San Diego, an educator, photographer. She had a solo exhibition here with us. It was very, very, very beautiful. She talks about culture, about identity, about family in a very warm way. So definitely you have to look her up. Recently, we worked with a street artist called Gerber. He just moved to San Diego 6 months ago, and he was part of the urban art exhibition that we had. We actually bought a couple of pieces. One of the hotels across the street bought a couple of pieces of him. He has a very vibrant technique, aesthetics, definitely describing all the craziness that happens in the border region. Amel Janet is, she creates drawings and paintings, most of the times in glass or in mirrors, with a very, very strong technique. And it's like just focused on the skin and the skin color, but with a very, very like a close up. So you just identify that there is a part of the body in this huge 5-foot mirror. And you can actually see yourself, but you can also see a part of this painting. She's great, and she's very, very young. So we also want to support her, and she's a good artist to look for.
Yeah, yeah, these are great. These are great recommendations. Anybody else that's just sort of out in the world that's really inspiring you right now that we should be paying attention to?
Well, yes, Irma Sofia Pueter. Irma Sofia is a very well-known artist from the region. We also had a solo exhibition of her work last year. I would also mention Fifi Martinez. She is a comic artist, so her technique, her whole body of work is different. She's focused on comics, but she calls herself your emotional cartoonist, because her comics are about love, are about depression, are about mental health. So these are the comics about a young lady just living, being in relationships where she feels sometimes disrespected, used, abused, in love, not in love, you know? So it's very, it's hard, it's easy to relate with her work.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all that information. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate you spending time with us today. What is your website? How do we find the front Galeria, and tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll have to say goodbye.
Yes, of course. We are on social media as the front Arte Cultura, Instagram and Facebook. You can also find our website at thefront.casafamiliar.org, and hope you get in touch soon. Thank you, Susanna, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much for your time today. Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.